right?
You're gonna have to talk loud, bud.
You're Dutch, right?
Yes.
And where is he from?
Sully, right?
And
Sully area?
Yep.
A long time ago, I lived in Sully.
that's where my dad lives.
And he's doing what, Sullivan?
Sully.
He's doing a lot of things.
He flew what? To
I'm
where?
having trouble here in
Oh.
Sullivan.
Get closer, Sullivan.
Yeah. Right next to it. So he's flying that's all brother, the C-47 that led the D-Day invasion back to Normandy Beach for the 75th anniversary.
Well, that's correct, Sullivan. So, how are you guys all doing today? You having fun?
Yeah.
So, I'm in Duxford, England, which is north and east of London, England. And I left Oxford, Connecticut, in That's All Brother. There you can see it last Sunday morning. And on Sunday morning, we flew from Oxford, Connecticut, up to Presque Isle, Maine, which is way, way, way up in the north end of Maine. And we got the last tank of gas in America because it's much cheaper in America than it is in Canada or even and especially in the North Atlantic. And from there we flew to Goose Bay, Labrador.
Spencer's in my class.
And in Goose Bay, we spent the night, and then we took off from Goose Bay and we flew to Narsarsuaq, Greenland. Does everybody know where Greenland's at?
Yeah.
You know what?
It's like
Yeah,
Iceland.
so we went to Narsarsuaq, Greenland, and the runway in Narsarsuaq is it points up into a fjord, and the fjord is like an inlet of the ocean, and there's mountains on both sides and rising terrain off the end. So you have to land going inland up the hill, then you have to take off going out to sea down the hill. And I've been flying for 4 years and tens of thousands of hours, but it is by far and away the most interesting airport I've ever seen. And we got fuel there, and in Greenland, we had to order our fuel last fall because the harbors all froze up over the winter, and they had to bring the fuel in last fall so that there would be fuel here for us this spring. And we got our fuel, and then we continued on to Reykjavik, Iceland. And we took a break in Iceland. The crew was pretty tired, and so we saw the sights in Iceland way, way, way up in the North Atlantic. It's about the same latitude as Fairbanks, Alaska. And so we spent an extra day there just recuperating, and then we flew from Iceland to Prestwick, Scotland. And that put us in Great Britain, and the route we flew is exactly the same route that thousands of airplanes flew to get from America to Europe during World War II. So we followed exactly that same route, and then when we got to Prestwick, Scotland, we spent a night there, and then we came down to Coventry, England. Did a 100-hour inspection on the airplane, and yesterday we flew over here to Duxford. And so Duxford is the home of the Imperial War Museum, and I don't know how well you can see, but way off down there in the distance you see a great big hangar. Can you see that?
I don't know.
That big curved top hangar that's way off down there in the distance. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the American Museum in Duxford, and it's all full of American warplanes. And that was built to honor the American Air Forces for all that they did to help the British during World War II. So that's our trip so far. As Sullivan said, we're here to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And D-Day was on June 6th. And on June 6th, I'm sure Sullivan's probably told you, over 800 airplanes like C-47s took off from England and went and dropped paratroopers behind enemy lines in France so that the Germans were not able to resupply the guns that were up on the beaches in Normandy as the invading force came from the landing crafts on the sea and invaded or liberated the mainland of Europe. And so that's it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to climb in the airplane. All right? So I think you can see the door here. Yeah, there's the door. So this is the door that in the middle of the night those troops would have jumped out of in the dark under parachutes, not knowing where they were going to land. And they landed in farm fields and on top of trees, and it was really, really a tough landing. So we'll climb up inside. These are the seats right here. So these seats are not very comfortable. They're just hard and aluminum. And this airplane has 26 paratrooper seats in it. But on D-Day, they had so much gear that they only carried about 18 passengers. And here we can walk up. And so you can see the seat belts. And you can see the inside of the airplane. There's no insulation. No interior. It's very thin aluminum. If somebody was shooting at you, the bullets would come right through. There was no protection. And they were so low to the ground that even small arms fire represented a threat. All right? So this is the back. So now we're up in the front of the cabin. And you can see we've got some gear in the back for our some spare parts and stuff in the back of the airplane. Obviously, that wouldn't normally be here. But we've been living out of this airplane for about 2 weeks, so we've got some stuff in here and so forth. But we'll get that taken care of. Now we're going into the cockpit. Over here we see the navigator station. So this airplane was equipped with some very advanced navigation gear because it was the lead airplane. So that if there were clouds, they would hopefully be able to find their landing spot. Back in here is the radio operator's compartment. So radios back then were much more complicated, and they took a specialized operator to operate the radio. And a lot of the communication they did, can you see the telegraph key there? See this right here? So they used Morse code, and you would tap that out on that telegraph key. Just rather than talk on the radio, you tap out. It was a dit, da, da, dit, and that was Morse code, and that was how they communicated. They had voice communications as well, but sometimes it was difficult. Now we're walking up. This is the hydraulics area right here. You can see all the gear, and here's the cockpit. So now we're in the cockpit, and I'm going to sit down on the pilot's seat. And this is pretty much what it would have looked like in World War II. Just like this. Anybody see that right there? Can you tell me what that is?
Hanger. The dog.
What?
The dog.
A dog.
Dog.
It's a dog. That's right. And so on D-Day, on that night, one of the crew members had a dog, and he was their mascot and their good luck charm. And so they took their dog with them. And we've tried to figure out what the name of the dog was, and nobody seems to know. So we call our dog TAB. And TAB is the abbreviation for That's All Brother. So that's what we're doing. And there's a kind of an air show here this weekend at Duxford, which is just an incredible place. If you ever had the opportunity to get to England, you need to come to Duxford. It is Disneyland for airplane people. And then that's this weekend, and then next June 5th, we're going to load up a bunch of skydivers and take them over to Europe and drop them. And then on June 6th, the President of the United States will be here, several other dignitaries, and we're going to fly over a memorial service. We're going to have a flight of C-47s, fly over a memorial service in France at the American Cemetery in France. So that's what we've been up to. Does anybody have any questions? One at a time. Megan, you want to call on him?
Yep, Maddie, why don't you go first and talk really loud so he can hear you, okay?
Where do you sleep?
We've been staying in Airbnb, so we rent on the internet. We rented homes for them. We've stayed in some hotels, but we've also rented some homes, private homes, and stayed in those. We don't have to sleep in the airplane.
Carson?
Who are you flying with?
So there are 5 of us. There are 5 of us on the airplane, and as we travel, our crews will change. People will. Some people will come over and others will go home because people just can't be away from home for this long. I'm on the crew. I left 2 weeks ago, and I'm on the crew through June 23rd. We have 4 pilots, and we take turns, and then a mechanic to help work on the airplane.
All right, Graham?
What do you eat?
Well, we eat in restaurants, just like Europe's very much like America. If you wanted McDonald's, they have that here too. But we've been trying to eat some more of the local food because it's more interesting, and so. We eat in restaurants just like we would in the States.
Doug, can you tell him why the airplane's called That's All Brother?
So in World War II, it was common for flight crews to name their airplanes. And so they would pick a name, and the crew of this airplane wanted to send a message to Hitler that when the invasion comes, that was it. That's all, brother. It's over. And that proved to be true because of the courage of the brave soldiers that paratrooped out of airplanes like That's All, brother, and the men that landed in landing craft and walked onto the beach. We were able to liberate Europe and to preserve freedom in England and America. And it was the beginning of the end of World War II when we landed in Europe.
Sullivan, you had a couple questions. Do you want to ask one of yours that you were?
How many cylinders do the engines on That's All Brothers have?
So That's All Brother has 2 Pratt & Whitney 1830 radial engines. So that means they are 1,830 cubic inches, and each engine has 14 cylinders. So that's 28 total cylinders, and there's 2 spark plugs for every cylinder. So the airplane has 56 spark plugs.
Jaren, do you have a question?
Does the dog count as a member?
Does the dog count as what?
A member. And
A crew member.
yeah.
Right. He's our good luck charm. And so he's been sitting up here on top of the compass keeping an eye on us for the whole trip.
Let's go.
Is it boring on the airplane, like when you're flying?
Well, when you're flying across the North Atlantic and the water temperature is below freezing, and your teacher can explain to you why. Does anybody know why the ocean can be below freezing and not freeze?
Graham?
Somebody's got their hand up there.
Graham, do you know?
Because it's salt water?
That's correct. So the temperature of the water was, 1 or 2 below 0. We checked on that. And so when you're flying a 75-year-old airplane across water that's below freezing, that's kind of high stress. So you don't really get bored. You've got a lot of things to think about. You're keeping a real close eye on the engines. You want to make sure if something's not right, you get it fixed right away. And so you pay very close attention. So no, I wouldn't say it was boring. The day we flew from Goose Bay to Reykjavik was probably, from takeoff to shutdown, was probably 16 hours. So that was a very long day, and it was tiring, but we had 4 pilots and we took turns. So it was all good. But no, I wouldn't say it was boring. Part of it is when you think about the young kids that did what we did. So in this airplane coming across here, the combined total time of the crew was over 50,000 hours. And when the young soldiers flew these airplanes across the North Atlantic 75 years ago, they were lucky that the combined total time airplane experience of the crew was 500 hours. So they were very inexperienced. And we had GPS navigation, and we have satellite pictures to look at the weather. We have computer models of the weather, so we know where the clouds and the ice will be. And we have very accurate wind forecasts, so we know that we're going to have that navigation. But 75 years ago, those kids didn't have all that stuff. And it was extremely dangerous what they did. And they demonstrated a tremendous amount of courage. And they went anyway, and lots and lots and lots of them perished. They didn't make it. They got lost. They ran out of fuel. They ran into terrible weather that they didn't know about, wasn't forecast. So what we did was easy by comparison. In no way does that compare to the courage that they had. But we did it so that people would, like you guys, would be interested and learn and ask questions. And maybe read a book or something about World War II and what happened and what was going on in the world then. And how an entire generation of Americans were willing to sacrifice everything, to and including their lives, so that those at home could live in a country that was free.
Doug, we actually found out that Levi has a grandpa. Levi, do you want to stand up? His great-grandpa was a tail gunner in a B-24 and B-29, and he still lives here in Pella. And is very clear.
So has your granddad ever talked about that?
Kind of.
It turns out he was Shane's principal.
You should go ask your granddad for those stories and learn what he did and what he experienced and what was going on in the world at that time, and then maybe you could bring him to the class and he could share those stories and experiences with your classmates so that you guys will understand, because you're the future. And if we forget the lessons and the history, we'll be forced to relearn them. And we paid, with hundreds of thousands of lives were lost in World War II so that the world would be free. And your granddad was one of those who went and served. And you should hear it from him while he's still with you and learn about that, and maybe share those stories, if he's willing, share those stories with your classmates.
I think you said he was drafted.
He was drafted the day he was 18.
The day he turned 18, he was drafted. And he flew missions down through Africa to Europe, because it must have been winter, maybe?
So they had to go down.
Yeah, a lot of the airplanes, there just wasn't the capacity on the northern routes. They had to send people wherever they could. So there were lots of different ways to get to Europe. One was to go up to Goose Bay where we were at, and then instead of going across the North Atlantic and get enough fuel, you could go southeast and go down to the Azores, and then back up northeast and go to Spain. And so if you get out your globe and you look at that, it seems crazy, but you leave Canada, you leave America and go to Canada, and then you turn around and go back southeast, and then back up northeast, zigzag across the ocean to get to Spain. But that requires longer range than we had in the DC-3.
Sullivan, do you want to call it? Is it Adam right here? Maybe one more
Adam,
question?
you have a question?
Is there any guns on the plane?
No, so that old brother was a transport. And what that means is it carried equipment and paratroopers, or they could load a bulldozer. And there was a little bitty bulldozer in World War II called a D3 Caterpillar. And you could load a D3 Caterpillar, or you could load a Jeep. You could load a 105 millimeter artillery piece. So the DC-3s, the C-47s, the British called them the Dakota. The nickname for this airplane is called the Goonie Bird, and the Goonie Birds hauled everything. People, food, fuel, they hauled everything. There are stories about the Flying the Hump. And there's lots of good stories about Flying the Hump, and those would be some good books that you could read and learn about the extraordinary measures that they went to get fuel into China so that they could fight Japan from the west.
Doug, if you had to do this in any other airplane, what airplane would you rather do it in?
Well, I mean, the easiest way to get across the North Atlantic is in a 787 or a 777 Boeing on an airliner. You know, there's food, hot coffee, and very fast and very comfortable. But I fly these old airplanes to keep the stories that they have to tell, and the stories of the men who flew them, and the men and women who built them, and the troops that jumped out of the back to keep stories alive. And so, flying this airplane across the North Atlantic, just like C-47s did by the thousands 75 years ago, is really a rewarding experience. So that's what it's really about for me. And it's been a great trip. We spent a lot of time just sitting, droning along at 9,000 feet, wondering what must have been going through the minds of those kids when they were doing this 75 years ago.
Do you know what path? I think there were some B-26s involved in D-Day. Do you know what route they took?
I don't know exactly what route they flew. There were lots of different routes. There were so many airplanes. I mean, there were just 800 C-47s alone. So they had to use all kinds of different routings to make sure that the groups didn't run into each other.
Maybe one more question, Sullivan. Call on one of your friends, and then
Carson.
Do you have like a model that you could show in the airplane?
Do I have a model?
Yeah.
Sullivan does. He can bring it tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll bring it.
Yeah, so I gave Sullivan a model of the airplane, and maybe he can, it's a very nice model, so it's not a toy, but maybe he could bring it in and show you guys the airplane. But I'm sure if you look up That's All Brother and Google it, you'll be able to find lots and lots and lots of stories and videos about this airplane and also about D-Day and again, all the stories and what we learned and the courage that those young soldiers had on that day.
Well, thank you, Doug.
Can we all give them
I've got one last question I want to ask. When I was outside, I don't know if I can show it to you here. Let's see if I look out at the wing. You see those black and yellow stripes from the wing?
Yeah.
Okay, can anybody tell me what those stripes are called? So they were called invasion stripes. And the night before these airplanes all left, they went out and quickly with mops and brooms, anything they could find, they needed black and white stripes on the wings of the airplane. Does anybody have any idea why they might have done that?
Tyson?
Because they wanted to know which airplanes to shoot at and which airplanes not to shoot at.
That is absolutely correct. And they gave them the name invasion stripes. But really, D-Day was not an invasion. We didn't go to Europe to invade it. We went to liberate it. Because France and Belgium and Holland had all been taken over by the Germans. And so the Americans went, and the British, and the Canadians, all went to liberate Europe, not to invade. So if you hear somebody call black and yellow white stripes on an airplane invasion stripes, feel free to correct them and tell them that's what they're called, but really they're not about invasion, they're about liberation. Because America went to liberate Europe, to free them from the tyranny of the Germans and the Japanese as well, the Axis powers. because their goal was to take over the world. And the plan was that America would be split at the Mississippi River, and everything east of the Mississippi would be controlled by the Germans, and everything west of the Mississippi would be controlled by the Japanese. And that didn't happen because people like your grandfather there, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Levi.
Was willing to go and fight. Levi, yes, Levi, your grandfather was willing to go and fight. So if there's a story that I want to leave you with today, it's that we didn't go to invade Europe. We went to liberate. And as a direct result of that, we all live free in America today. And England is free, and France is free, and Germany is free because the people in Germany were free from a can't say the word now, but a tyrannical government that was doing horrible things to their own people. So that's one of the messages that I want to leave today, okay?
Thank you so much. Can we all say thank you, guys?
You're welcome, and I think y'all probably know that last Saturday was Sullivan's birthday, so give Sullivan a happy birthday for me because I wasn't there to do it, okay?
All right.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.